Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. All right, my beautiful family. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Season of Self-Love podcast. You know, it is Wisdom Wednesday, and I am your host, Nyomi Banks. And as always, I am so honored to hold this space with you on your self-love journey. Well, this month we are diving deep into our May series, Nurturing Relationships and Fostering Healthy Connections. And today we are talking about something so important, and that is self-care in a relationship. So let me ask you something. How many of you prioritize others before yourselves? You give and give and you pouring into relationships, but at the end of the day, you are running on empty. Well, today we are going to flip that script because the truth is self-care isn't selfish. It's actually one of the best things that you can do for yourself and your relationships. And we have the perfect guest to help us navigate this, and this is Jenny Lythe. Jenny is a former hospice nurse turned self-care stress release coach who helps people break free from burnout and find balance in their lives. She's also the author of Self-Care Isn't Selfish, which is a must-read for anyone struggling to prioritize themselves. But we will bring Jenny to the stage once we take a quick break, all right? It's your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks here on this Season of Self-Love podcast, and we'll be right back.
Washington Wellness Institute focuses on healing always. For me, if I look good, then I feel good. If I feel good, then I share the good. If I share the good, then I celebrate the good. If I celebrate the good, then I live the good. So I can be paid to be my greatest. But I have to learn the good to be the good.
So, what does it take to be the greatest? It's as simple as a free 15-minute consultation. Be kind to yourself and heal always.
Hey, it's your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks, and make sure you tune in every Thursday night to Ask Nyomi Bridging the Gap podcast, where we talk about everything from love, sex, relationship, cultural differences, and so much more. We're bridging the gap between them all, and we even talk about spiritual uplifting. You need to stop by me and Dr. Mike, as well as the BTG group. We have some amazing guests that come through. You never know. Make sure you tune in Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Go to axnyomi.com and tell them Nyomi sent you. All right, well, welcome, Jenny.
Well, hello. Thank you so much, Nyomi. I appreciate you having me.
Yes. You know, I'm excited about this conversation. A lot of times we get so caught up in just doing for others that we truly forget about ourselves. And also we forget about once we care about ourselves, we are able to do for others better. We truly do. So I'm glad that you're speaking on this and you're talking about this today. But before we get into the topic, you know, listeners, you all know we have to ground ourselves first. So right now, if you can get comfortable wherever you are at and close your eyes just for a moment. Inhale deeply through your nose, allowing yourself to release any tension. And exhale, letting go of any stress or worries. Now, as you take another breath in, I want you to visualize yourself as a full cup, overflowing with love, energy, and care. This is what happened when we prioritize self-care. And repeat silently to yourself, I deserve rest. I deserve care. And I am allowed to take up space. I want you to take one final deep breath in and exhale completely. And when you are ready, please open your eyes. All right, my beautiful people. First of all, thank you for just sharing that space with me. And if you're new here to the Season of Self-Love, there's something we do every day, Monday through Friday, just to help ground us to get into our topic. All right, Miss Jenny, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So your journey from hospice nursing to self-care coaching is so powerful. Can you share what led you to this transition?
Yes. Well, my own burnout. So I have been a nurse for 30 years. And so I've always been somebody that has cared for everybody else. And I love that. I mean, I feel like that's something that I'm called to do, but I kind of slipped over into the dark side a little bit and into a space where I was so busy caring for other people that I didn't take any time for myself. And that led me to my own burnout journey. And I had to go through a pretty dark place to figure out that like this isn't how I want to live my life. And then my mom passed away, and I believe that a lot of that was due to a lack of self-care, and all of that kind of came together to really make me realize that there are so many of us that do a really bad job of caring for ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's something that is so important that the more I talk to, nurses was of course who I was, kind of hearing from mostly because that was who I was surrounded with. But then, I mean, women, men, honestly, it's something that really we all struggle with, is feeling like it's selfish or we don't have time or we don't know where to start. And so that has really just ignited a passion in me to help people see that like it doesn't have to be a full-time job. It's not all about spa days and vacations, although those are great, but it's about the simple things that we can do that really have an impact.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of times we don't understand what self-care is, like you just mentioned, it's bubble bath and stuff like that. No, it's more than just that. We talk about that a lot here on the Season of Self-Love, where we have, different practices and stuff that we do. And we always open to hear more new practices because sometimes some things resonate more with others than it do. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this phrase of self-care that is it selfish? Because we usually think that it's selfish because we feel like we're doing for ourselves first. That's why even in the meditation, my co-host on Mondays, Dr. Will, I remember him telling me back last year when we first started working together, he said, because I always would say about my cup being half full. And he said, why are you continuing to pour from an empty cup? And I'm like, well, no, my cup is, he said, no, how about working on your cup being full and overflowing?
Yeah.
Well, those around you. And it didn't click to me until he said it then. And so I know a lot of people, especially women, especially mothers and caregivers, because I myself am a caregiver with my mom, struggle with guilt.
Absolutely.
With guilt around taking care of themselves. So what do you think that is?
Well, I think I think part of that is society, and especially something that women, like we've had that kind of put on us that, that it's our job to take care of people, and if we have kids, we're supposed to be taking care of them. And I'm not saying don't take care of your kids, but it doesn't have to mean completely neglecting yourself. And I think that we make it we make it feel like it's too much of a chore or like it's something so unattainable. I don't have time to take care of myself. And I get that, I'm incredibly busy. I don't have little ones at home anymore, but I have children. I had a bunch of children at home. We've got grandkids. I work hospice still at night, and I do this during the day. And so, I've got a busy life as well. And it's those little things that we can put into our lives that make a difference. And so not only do I believe that self-care isn't selfish, but that a lack of it could be, because sometimes we can get that external validation, when we're helping everybody then people are saying, oh my gosh, you know what? She's just always so helpful and she's so great. And that makes us feel good. I mean, we like to feel needed.
Mhm.
And so sometimes we can kind of lean into that identity a little too much. And, I feel like my mom's lack of self-care is a big part of the reason I don't have her with me anymore. And so one of the things that I try to get people to have that little mindset shift, like you said, with the cup running over and all of that is, okay, so if you feel like you don't have time or like you can't take care of yourself because you have all of these people to take care of, well, what if something happens to you? Because our bodies, as we're having different things happen, when you start getting more headaches or you're having more gut issues and trouble sleeping and all of that, those are your body is signaling that something is not right. Those are kind of a, hey, you need to do something different. And if you don't listen, then it's going to start clanging a little louder. And then, things can end up going not so well. And so when you think of it that way, instead of, well, I've got all these people depending on me, so I can't take care of myself. And you flip that to, that's why I've got to take care of me, because I've got all these people depending on me. And so that's why I say, self-care isn't selfish. It's the only way that we can continue to show up for others and live our best lives.
Yes, yes, yes. Speak it, girl. No. you know, because that honestly, that used to be my thing. I now when my body tells me to go lay down and sit down, because sometimes I can be hard-headed. Sometimes we can be hard-headed. Sometimes
Oh yeah.
we could be so hard-headed and just sit down. And I'd be like, okay,
Mhm.
after this. And before I knew it, it's a headache to come along,
Yeah.
or vertigo would trigger, and I have no choice but to lay down.
Exactly. Yeah. That's when we don't listen, then we're going to end up having to listen. And I don't know if you just saw that or not, but I'm in a hot flash season
Yeah,
of my
I
life.
saw that.
Yeah, and it's just these past couple of weeks it's been hitting me hard. Like I'm just cruising along, everything's all good, and then all of a sudden, I feel like a microwave baked potato. And so I am going to see a naturopath to have my hormones looked at again. Self-care, sometimes it ain't sexy, but but it's important. It's important to do those things, to realize when our body's sending us signals that maybe we need to do something a little different.
Right. So let me ask you this. There is this powerful word, 2-letter word, no, that we are so afraid of using.
Yes.
How can we get our listeners to say it's okay to use no, that very powerful, magical word?
I know it's so little, but oh my gosh, it seems so big when we think about using it, doesn't it? Well, so I think part of it is practicing it. If you have a couple of friends, just practice saying no and have fun with it. Just ask each other questions and just keep saying no. It does get a little easier. But some of us don't want to, we don't want to be rude, or we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or we don't want to be I want to be a team player. And so a couple of things that I do and that I encourage my clients to do is, I am somebody that, yes, my initial reaction is, yes, I want to do everything. I want to help everybody out. I want to do all the fun stuff. And the next thing I know, I'm like, I don't have enough time to sleep, so I probably need to say no to a few things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I try to, and I can't say I always do this perfectly, but when something comes up, instead of just immediately saying, oh, sure, I'll do that, I'll say, you know what, let me check my schedule and I'll get back with you. That gives me that little bit of space. It's kind of like impulse buying.
Yeah.
It gives me that little bit of space. And I'm like, you know what, I really don't need that. Or I really, can't fit this into my schedule. So that's one thing. Another thing that I like to do is I block off time in my calendar that is either just me time, or some of it just says block. And that's when I know that my calendar is getting, I look and things are getting a little too heavy, and I'm like, I don't want to schedule anything else. I don't want to have anybody schedule in a session. I don't want to schedule another podcast interview right now, because I need a little downtime. But then I can say, when somebody says, hey, can you come into work tonight? We're really short. Can you come in and work tomorrow? You know what? Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm already booked. And I am.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, I can just say no. No, I don't have to explain why, but for people like me who don't necessarily always feel comfortable saying that, then I am booked. I'm booked with downtime because I know that's what I need. And that's something that has been very helpful for me and for people, because before I was able to, I would think, and this is a lot of how I ended up in my burnout phase, I would think, well, somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
And, there were, some of the other nurses would have, well, my son's got a football game, or I've got this, or I've got that. And I was like, well, I mean, like, my family's all at home and stuff. And so I'm missing out on that time with them, but I don't have any like real reason to, I don't have any event or anything. So I guess I'll just do it. And that, that's not a good way to be all the time. Yeah. And, I mean, there's a time when, yes, you want to be a team player. You want to be able to help out when you can, but especially if you're the one that's always the one helping out, then there's a problem with that.
Yeah.
So that's another one. And then also I have a permission slip in my book, and that's something that I give out at my workshops too, where you can just write yourself a permission slip to do whatever it is that you're wanting to do, because sometimes we just need that. I mean, it's kind of goofy, but sometimes just having that tangible thing that reminds you, you know what, like I can take care of myself. I can say no. I can take a nap. I can spend 20 minutes by myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love the whole permission slip thing. And as you were talking, is one thing is that I do when I talk about having relationships with doing with others. I'd be like, okay, what about that no to self? What about that no to self? We have this will to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
As my co-host on Monday kind of told me, it was like, you are kind of like, you love productivity. It's like you're addicted to doing so much. And I was like, but he hit it right on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, I said, you know what? Nyomi, you have to say no to yourself, because yourself can be that one that, we're going to do this, boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And then sometimes you have to say, no, boo, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and maybe it's just, you can't do that yet.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, it's not the time.
Yeah.
And, when I tell my listeners sometimes, because sometimes you have to check yourself, like, it might sound crazy, but I said, look, you need to go sit over there somewhere, because we're doing this over here. Because sometimes you have different things, and they would say, Naomi, you are so, but you have these different things that have different personality. It do, because you're a mother. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a caregiver. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a host of. So many things they have to show up. Even though I say I don't, I don't turn. I'm who I am, but still they have different things in life that they want to achieve in life. And all of them, every single one of the beautiful parts of myself, a part of you and everyone else, we all striving for perfection. I don't care how much we say ain't nothing perfected.
Yeah.
Perfect, but we still strive for that, because we are made in God's image. And if we look at God is perfect.
Yeah.
So we try to mimic those same things.
Mm-hmm.
We have to check ourselves, because we got to think we are human.
Yeah. And we got to, if we're going to be mimicking that, we also need to be looking at his grace, and extend that to ourselves. So.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. All right. So let's talk about connections between self-care and relationships.
Yep.
Now, how does taking care of yourself improve the way that you show up in your relationships?
Well, when you take care of yourself, you feel better. Mm-hmm. You're less moody. You are reminded of your own worth. When you're prioritizing yourself and your own needs, I mean, that's sending a signal that, hey, I'm worth this. And I know I have been in not great relationships. My husband and I have been married for 27 years now. And that's all good. But prior to that, I was in a couple I was in a couple bad relationships. And I really lost sight of who I was. And that took a long time to mean, my husband had to do a lot of fixing for relationships that, happened long before he knew, because there was just so much damage done there, because I really, my self-worth was, it was greatly diminished. And it took a while to understand that, like, hey, I'm worth more than I've been getting. And, when we show up exhausted and just worn out and beat down from everything, then how are we supposed to give much good when we're just depleted? And, like, back to the empty cup thing, there's a reason why that's such a common example, is because, I mean, when we are just empty, then we can't give to anybody else.
Yeah.
And the same goes with, our friendships, our romantic relationships, our caregiving relationships. When we're exhausted, physically, caregiving in any sense is difficult. And so when you're doing that and you're already exhausted, you're more at risk for injury. You've got, like, all of these things that it's not just about, okay, well, I'm going to, make sure that I've had a bath and get my hair done. Instead, it's, it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it's the way to be able to really, to stay focused on other people in addition to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get that. That is so very real. So for our listeners right now who want to start prioritizing their self-care, but they don't have time, what would you say to them?
I would say to them that it doesn't have to be as big of an undertaking as you might think. And so I encourage, just like we did a meditation at the beginning of this episode, I encourage people, just take a couple of minutes to breathe. And really, like, lock yourself in the bathroom. You're already in there anyway, while take an extra, seriously, 1 to 2 minutes, and just close your eyes, just take a couple of deep breaths, maybe stretch a little bit, and really just be for a minute, try to quiet your mind and just, do some belly breathing instead of these little short, shallow breaths like we take when we're just on the go all the time. A few slow, inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, and just, and it's amazing how much of a difference that can make. And you feel more equipped to, like, take on the day, or at least the next 5 or 10 minutes, and so doing that regularly is something that's so simple, but can have such a big impact. And that's why I caution, especially when I first start working with somebody who maybe is like their anxiety is kind of up to here, is, don't discount these things because they sound simple, don't do that. Well, I know that. Knowing and doing are two different things. There's a whole lot of things that I know that I don't do. and that's, but it's the doing that actually, will have an impact. And so prioritizing sleep, if that's possible. And I know for some people, depending on their stage of life, that may be, a big challenge, but are there things that you can do to get a little more rest? Because that's hugely important. That affects everything.
Yeah.
Gratitude is another thing. Super simple, doesn't take a lot of time, write down or even just say or think 3 specific things that you're grateful for. Yeah. Because, we train our minds to focus on the good then, instead of, there's so much negativity in the world, on social media, just in our minds. Our minds are constantly scanning for the dangers and the negative. And so we have to, really try to focus and reprogram ourselves to focus on looking for the good. And it's out there. And when you think of, 2 or 3 little things, like right now, the sun's shining. It's, I don't know, something. It's 60 some degrees here and it's been cold, so those are things that are, they're little, but they're big, especially coming out of winter, they're big, but it's those little things that, those are little things that kind of apply to everybody. But beyond that, it's get clear on what matters to you, on what fills your cup, because that can be very different for me and you.
Yeah.
and taking a little bit of time, we don't really think about that. We expect that it should all be one size fits all, or that it should just automatically happen. And it doesn't. It does take a little bit of intentionality.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is much needed. So let me ask you this. I had an interview, I guess, probably a few months ago, and she had said something to me that I've never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
She said that I was addicted to my anxiety. I thought that was and she said, because I went to what was familiar to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I do think that, yes, we can get very caught up in those perceptions, those kind of comfortable, uncomfortable zones where we identify in a certain way. And I actually was just on I did another podcast interview earlier today, and I was looking at some of this stuff, and it's focused on mental health, and it's a great podcast. And I think, like so many, we're getting the word out a little more, and we're having these conversations, and that's wonderful to be able to talk openly about the struggles that we have and these challenges. But I think it's it can be a slippery slope when we identify too much with a diagnosis, or I've got this thing going, or we focus on this is my anxiety, or I had, and we personalize it too. It's not just anxiety, it's my anxiety. Mm-hmm. and I see that happening more and more, and I'm not sure that's helpful. Because it's kind of like your friend, well, why would I want to get rid of it? It's my anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's it's something too. And I've really started thinking about that more and more over the past couple of months. And I thought, I need to look into that a little more at some point. But honestly, I just haven't yet, because I've been busy.
As you saying that, I get that. I get it now. Now I really get it now, because just her saying about being addicted to anxiety, and you saying now was like, wow, like, it's like now mental health, mental awareness is such a big thing now, just such a big aware. And when you become so aware, then you start to put labels on yourself, or make it a part of you. Like, anxiety is my arm. You understand?
Right,
like, I can't move without my. So I got exactly what you were saying. As you were saying, I was like,
right,
wow.
Right. And so many things, like, I feel like the word trauma is thrown around a lot when, when, yes, there's trauma, and there's the big trauma, and there's the smaller trauma, and then there's just life. There's just the things that are life, and not everything that isn't sunshine and roses is necessarily trauma either. So I think it's just, it's great that we're talking more about it, but it's I just don't want it to go too far the other way, where it's just like, well, it's just, my anxiety, my depression, my whatever this label may be, and just staying stuck in that, instead of, okay, yes, maybe I do have some anxiety and some depression, but here's some things that I'm doing that, that help me feel better.
Yeah. I love that you say that. And why? It's because we probably last year on my other podcast, we talked about using our words. One book that I love is The 4 Agreements, and it's about using your words. And as you say words, you kind of, like they say, words is so magical, you kind of curse yourself or curse others with the words that come out your mouth. So if you're saying anxiety, you saying trauma, if you saying these things along with it, then that materialize,
right,
manifest
absolutely
in your life. And it was something that you say, well, what if it's just life? Speaking, one of my dear friends had sent me, and I want to ask you, what's your thought on this statement?
Okay.
That she had heard this statement, and the statement is, life isn't fair, but life is just.
Well, that's interesting. And I'm not completely sure how I feel about that. For me, and I guess maybe I'm going to over spiritualize this, to me, life isn't fair, but God is just. And so I mean, that's where I go with that, and there's a lot of things that I don't understand about, about the way that life works or God works or whatever, but I don't feel like that's necessarily my job to completely understand that, even though I'd love to, because I want to, I'd really love it if he'd break it all down for me. But yeah, so I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, so what I told her is, I said this. I told her that life in general, first of all, life, if you're breathing, that's life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's life there. Now let's go into the fairness. The fairness is, for any of us, life isn't fair because we are all individuals. We are all individuals. God made us in so many different forms. But it's up to you to make the life that you have, and don't compare it to no one else. You know what I'm saying? So if you focus more on your life and what your life is and what you have, rather than looking on who has more or who has less than you, if that makes sense. So that was my opinion of that statement right there that I saw for me. And I was like, we stop concentrating more on who has more or who has less and start doing us, and then that'll be, I think that's what that is. But then that also then we can go a little deeper. I love going down a rabbit hole. I'm not going to go down there. But it goes deeper to us treating each other and serving one another with respect, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So that's what my bigger thing about the season of self-love, because we have to learn how to love ourselves and have an intimate relationship with ourselves, as we speaking on today's topic on how we can treat others, like the way we treat ourselves, like really, truly, that we can truly show up. So I just wanted to share when you had said that, kind of gave me a little gateway to walk through that door. Like, okay, that's why I got this today. Let me see what Miss Jenny will say. Yeah. But I
like
love
that.
your answer, even with the answer of God is. I love that. That's just simple. Bam. Yeah. That was just simple. All right, Jenny, so your book, Self-Care Isn't Selfish.
Yes.
Such a great resource. Can you share one or two practical self-care exercises from your book that listeners can implement today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've talked a little bit about just some super simple things, but even like kicking that up a bit of a notch. So one of my favorite things to do is to use the quick coherence technique. And so what that does is it's kind of a little bit of a specialized breathing technique, but still very simple, very doable, very accessible anywhere, where you can, let's just do it here real quick. So just kind of settle in and just take a couple of deep breaths. Just maybe breathe a little bit slower and a little bit more deeply than you normally would. You're just breathing into the area around your heart. And just get into a nice, easy rhythm. And as you're just breathing into that area around your heart, just try to experience a positive or regenerative emotion or feeling. So maybe it's a special memory of a place you love or someone that you care about, or just kind of a feeling of peace or joy. And just as you're breathing, just kind of re-experience that. And that literally that's the technique. It's super simple, but it helps to get your heart back into coherence. So instead of your breathing and your heart rate kind of being like this, like they get when we're stressed out, it helps to get that back in this easy flow. And you can go from a stress level of a 7 to a 4 in just a few simple seconds. And I've had clients use that when they're working with clients. So, I've had a therapist that was doing that, and she would do that in between her therapy clients because, you're holding on to a lot of stuff for people like that. Or doing it when you're going into a challenging situation with a family member or a coworker. And yesterday I went to a career fair here locally and talked with some of the college students there about stress relief and being able to do those kind of techniques, before exams and before interviews. And so it's a very simple thing that not only has an effect on you, and that's what I think so super cool about it, is not only does it bring your stress level down, but like in a 6 to 8 foot radius, it chills the people around you out too. So that's I think that's something that's so helpful to be able to use, kind of anywhere. And stopping and asking yourself, especially if you're thinking, I just don't even really know where to start, or I'm feeling really overwhelmed with things, and just stop again, a breath or two, and think, what is it that I really need most right now? And that's something that I come back to when I'm, because I get like that, that's why I like talking about this, because it keeps me from being a hypocrite, because I've got to that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to use that again. But it reminds me that, I know, we know what we need usually. Mm-hmm. We may say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I think about this situation. But then it's like, when you just stop and you go, okay, really, what is it? And sometimes moving can kind of get that unstuck too. Go for a walk, even if you're just kind of walking around in circles around your house for a few. Just getting in movement can help get you unstuck. Yeah. And so that is, that's such a great and simple tool to be able to figure out, hey, what is it that I need? Maybe I need to go outside for a couple of minutes. Maybe I need to schedule a dinner with a friend. Maybe I need to call a friend, or have a snack, or take a nap, or, usually it's something small and easy to do. Maybe it's book a vacation if you need to, and if you can, have at it. I love taking trips, but we can't take those all the time, or most of us can't. And another thing that I really love is I have a happy basket where I keep just things that bring me joy, mine's actually, it's sitting right here. So I've got my book in it. I've also got a magazine that I enjoy. I've got a coloring book and some colored pencils and some lotion and a tennis ball and a sock that I use to get my knots out back here. And so I've just got things like that they're easily accessible. It's things that bring me joy, and then I don't have to look for them. It's right there. Right. And a wins file. That's definitely another big tip is keep a wins file of things that, when somebody tells you something great about yourself, when you get some kind of award, when that you did something, it doesn't have to be something that somebody else says, but when hey, you know what, I was really afraid to do this thing, but I killed it, make a note of that and put it in there, because we all have times when we're feeling down and feel like, everything's going wrong, we're messing everything up, and being able to pull that out and review it is wonderful. And I'll do that with screenshots from my phone, if somebody tells me something, or, I had somebody on Facebook that said a couple of things that were really nice, and I was like, totally going in my wins file. And I like to have that, because it does remind you, especially if you're doing something that feels like it's sometimes difficult work that maybe isn't going as quickly as you'd like it to, it's like, hey, what I'm doing is having an impact. And so it doesn't have to be, I don't have to be on a billboard. I don't have to be on a bestseller list to be making a difference.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to take your happy basket. I like that.
Wonderful.
And I love the win. What is it? The win list. The
wins file, wins list. Yep.
Yeah, I love that too. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. All right, so I have one more question for you before we close out.
Okay.
What's a good self-care routine for busy parents?
So I think, if possible, getting up a little bit of time before your family does, where you have a little bit of time to yourself before you've got to start pouring into everybody else. And figure out, what does that look like for you? What is your ideal morning look like? Maybe that's sitting and, just having a cup of coffee and the peace and quiet. Maybe that's reading, reading from a book or the newspaper or devotionals, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's, getting in the shower and being able to take kind of an extra long shower and just or going outside and getting a little bit of a walk, but again, personalize it, figure out what fits into your life and what really, if you did these 3 things, if you could get these 3 things in, then your day would be off to a great start. You'd call that a win. So, and whatever that looks like for you, see if there's a way to do it. And maybe it's getting up a little earlier. Maybe it's, if you have somebody else in the home with you and you're able to, trade off some of those things where you're each able to have a little bit of that time. And sometimes it maybe is even after you take the kids to daycare, or you've got the kids doing something if you're home with them, throughout the day. But don't just assume that you can't do it because you're busy. I think there are ways to be able to fit those things in. It may take a little bit of finagling and trial and error, and then have some grace with yourself, because there's going to be days when it just doesn't work. And it may be, squeezing in little things during nap time, or, on your way to work, or little times in the car. It may not be able to all happen at once. Yes. And that's okay too. But every little bit helps.
Right. Well, thank you for that amazing answer to that question. Yes, thank you for that. Jenny, this has been such a powerful episode. Just the conversation alone, I knew it was going to be good. Just reading your profile, I was like, this is going to be a good one.
Well,
but before we wrap up, where can the listeners find you and grab a copy of your book?
Yes. Well, thank you. So, you can see all kinds of things on my website. It's jennylytle.com, JennyLytle.com. And, I've got a podcast as well called, The Nurses Break Room with Jenny Lytle RN. And it's, most of my stuff is written to and speaking to nurses, but the reality is it's all about self-care, and it all, applies to all of us. And so I've got some other resources there as well. And my book is available on Amazon. And like you said, it's Self-Care Isn't Selfish, the Compassionate Nurse's Step-by-Step Guide to Personalized Self-Care. No, to Personalized Stress Relief. And, but, searching my name there will pop that up as well. And also, I would like to offer your listeners a free digital copy of my book. And if you can't remember my name, you can just go to selfcareisn'tselfish.com and download a copy of the book there.
Oh, beautiful. Well, first of all, thank you for the free download digital copy. Thank you for that. Welcome. And just truly thank you for the conversation. Thank you for joining us on this series this month. I really believe that our listeners would truly resonate with this. And to you, my listeners out there, my family, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And I want you to remember that self-care is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It truly is. And make sure you grab our free yearbook, Year of Rebirth workbook. You know where to get it at the Season of Self-Love podcast. And don't forget to grab Jenny's book. And until next time, remember, my beautiful people, take care of yourself first. All right. Have an amazing, amazing day. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com. and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today, and remember, you are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer.